This is Talking Drupal, a bi-weekly chat about web design and development from a group of guys with at least one thing in common. We love Drupal. We record this live on Wednesday afternoons in a Google Hangout. Visit us at talkingdrupal.com. This is episode 112, Wednesday, January 27th, 2016, Selling Drupal. Welcome, guys.
Hey, Steve, how you doing?
Afternoon.
So here we are. I mean, does it feel like it's been a long time since we've done a show? It feels like that to me.
Yes.
When was the last time you guys did a show?
It's been a long
So it
time.
has been a long time. All right.
Been about a month.
We
But
can't even remember.
But we've done 2 webinars in between. But it's been about a month since we recorded the actual show.
Yeah. So
Cool.
so we've done webinars, and we've talked a bunch of times, but we actually haven't recorded something. So, hey, welcome. So as usual, we have John Picozzi from Oomph. Welcome, John.
Good afternoon.
How are you today? I see you're wearing your Johnson & Wales sweatshirt today.
It is true. I am wearing a sweatshirt. I am working from home.
And you are a proud alum of Johnson & Wales and a professor there, right?
I am. Both of those things are true. For all you people asking or wondering, I did not get a degree in anything culinary or hospitality related. My degree is in actually technology. So it's a big question when you say Johnson & Wales, people automatically assume that you're a chef or you work in the hotel industry.
Well, Johnson & Wales is the MIT of Rhode Island, isn't it?
I think New
Right.
New England Tech would probably argue about that,
Okay.
but
No, the tech program's
Yeah.
getting bigger over there, isn't it?
yeah, they're actually just they're working on right now building a brand new school of engineering and design. So
Awesome.
I'm really excited to get in there and teach in a new building. I think the end of this year or the beginning of next year.
Cool.
We also have Nick Laughlin, as usual, joining us from enlighteneddevelopment.llc. Hey, Nick.
Hello, hello, hello. And you can probably see some boxes still in the background, getting ready to move. But I think I'm almost as excited about the new mic that John has. So people watching YouTube should be able to see that, and I'm sure our iTunes listeners will be thankful as well.
So, Nick, you say there's boxes in the back and you're moving. You actually purchased a home.
Yeah, it should
Congrats.
be.
You're moving in on Saturday, right?
Very cool.
Yeah, it should be closing on Friday. So there's still a very small window. There's still that small niggling voice in the back of my mind, but yeah, everything should be going smoothly. The process has been pretty smooth so far.
Great. These should be closing on Friday. Is always scary to say it that way, but good luck.
Thanks. Looking forward.
And I'm going to put it in my calendar to help you move on Saturday.
Any and all help will be appreciated.
All right.
So.
I am
That's
not
a true
gonna
friend.
put it in my,
True friend right
in my
there.
calendar.
Don't worry, John.
Nice.
All right, so we also have a guest today joining us. You've heard him a few
Hey, guys.
times in the background here. We have Adam.
Lamagna.
Lamagna, and it's like what?
Lasagna.
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 Okay, Adam Lamagna.
Super easy to remember. So.
So Adam is a sales consultant at Security, which is a website security company.
Yep.
Our connection with Adam is an interesting one because he worked with John for a number of years over at Oomph.
Yes.
And sold and delivered a number of Drupal products and services. So that's why he's with us today. But as Adam also runs a full gamut of the sales industry, from cold calling to door-to-door sales. I'd love to know more about the door-to-door sales part. You weren't
good old
selling
days.
vacuum cleaners, were you, Adam?
No, I wasn't. I was actually selling cases of steak and seafood. So little more interesting than vacuum cleaners.
I'm not sure.
Adam, were you doing that in LA?
I was, yeah.
Nothing
you
like
have-
nothing like having steak and seafood in the back of your car in the hot LA sun.
Hey,
trying to
no,
sell
it was
it door to door.
We were in freezer trucks. They were all cryovac wrapped. They were guaranteed for 12 months, I think it was. Choice beef, so it was good.
Hey, lady, I got some steaks in the back of my car. I'd love to sell you.
That's kind of how it went. John, you'd probably be pretty good at it, actually.
So the topic of our show today is selling Drupal. So Adam sounds like the right guy to do this. I mean, he's been doing sales in a bunch of places. So in addition to where he is today and where he was working with John, he's also been involved in technology space for over 4 years. First as a web developer. So he started doing web work, then moving to business development, and then to a solutions consultant. So Adam really has sort of done the sales thing, but also done some tech stuff in a lot of spaces. So with his success at Oomph, we asked Adam to come in with us today and just talk about the sales process for Drupal, which is something that's always on everyone's mind. I mean, if you're a business listening to this, or you're a sole proprietor selling your services, you always need to think about selling. It's a part of what you do because it brings in the money. So thanks for coming on, Adam.
Thanks for having me, guys. No, I'm super excited to be here. Awesome.
Great. So let's start this week again with we've been doing these the last couple of episodes. We've been talking about some tech tips of the week, just things that we've run into that we wanted to share with people. I'll start today, and then we have something from John and Nick as well. So the first one from me is Inline Images. So I've been doing some Drupal 8 work lately, thankfully. Enjoying it and frustrated by it at the same time. Running into issues that you don't expect to come up, and they do come up, but it's new technology, but it's working good. And I just want to point out that Inline Images, so in Drupal 8, we now have the ability, out of the box to have a CK editor as your text editor for doing full HTML and modifying content. There is a button in there that you can insert in an inline image, and it works fantastic out of the box. So turn on the Inline Images option, and a user can select an image from their local disk, insert it into the website, and it works fantastic. Right out of the box, you have left-to-right adjustment, which will create some CSS for you. It's probably left, right, middle, and none adjustments. You have captions that are available to you, so you can turn a caption on for a user. And it works great. The only issue that I've had with it so far is that it doesn't really support image styles. So if a user uploads a 2 meg image, you've got a 2 meg image sitting on your website in this text area that you're displaying. That's a problem. It looks like it's going to be addressed in 8.1, so I wouldn't shy away from using inline images, but there's really not a whole lot of options for you today in Drupal 8 other than the default what comes in Drupal 8, and it works really good.
It's actually a great tip, and my tip's actually image focused as well. I've been doing a lot of work with image optimization in Drupal 7 lately, and I've actually found a Drush command that's very helpful. It is Drush image flush space -- all, and basically what that does is it flushes all your derivative images that are created by your image presets. This is really useful when you're setting up a new image optimization scheme and you need to get rid of all the presets and have them all the generated images and have them regenerate. This command basically goes in and deletes everything in the styles directory in your files folder. So it's very helpful and really a time saver instead of going in and doing it manually.
So, John, the instance you would use this is if you've changed an image style on a field from, image style A to image style B, so no one is ever going to see A anymore, and you just want to delete that content?
No, it'd be more like your image optimization was using the GD2 library, and all your derivatives were created using that optimization scheme, and you installed Imagemagick, and now you want all your derivatives to be basically re-optimized with Imagemagick as opposed to the GD2. So you can drop all your images and use the new optimization once they're regenerated. It also works if you don't.
So it's forcing, because you're deleting the files, it's forcing the regeneration of it with the new definition.
Exactly. You can also do just a specific style. So if you had, a blog thumbnail style, you could do just a blog thumbnail style. Removing the all and just adding the style name that you wanted to use.
So, the reason that you brought this up probably is because you've changed the way you're doing some images today. I'm guessing. I don't know that, but
yeah, no, that is true. We're using Imagemagick and the image optimization API that we actually talked about
in episode Talking Drupal 107.
107 with Jason.
Wow. Yeah, so if you go to Talking Drupal /107 on our website, you can learn about the benefits of using Imagemagick instead of what you get from Drupal by default.
Yeah, it's been a good time, so I recommend it, and it saves a bunch of bandwidth, so that's good too.
Great, thanks.
Sounds good. And my tip is a little bit more straightforward. It's something that I found very helpful in the last couple of years, especially when I see them on projects that I don't own, is breaking up the modules folder into 3 separate folders. So on Drupal 7, you'll see sites, all modules, and a lot of people will just dump every module in there. Well, what some people don't know is that you can add 3 subfolders in there, at least 3 subfolders in there. One for contrib, one for custom, and one for features. What this allows you to do is break out features in custom code from contributed code. So it's very easy to see what somebody's modified, what somebody's created, and then what features from the features module exists on the site. And then it's pretty easy to classify what's going on. The only caveat here is, just like normal, you can't really. It's not the most straightforward pathway to move something from. If you apply a patch, for example. It's not the most straightforward thing to move something from contrib to custom. Sometimes you have to clear registry or some other things, but if you do it from the beginning, it's definitely a lot easier to manage the code base going forward.
Yeah, great tip too, Nick.
Cool.
So if anyone has any additional tips they'd like to share with us, you could do that through a number of ways. One is to call us. We have a new voicemail line at 401-400-2004, so 401-400-2004. You could send us an email to talkingdrupal@gmail.com. You could also tweet us at talkingdrupal, and we could include any of your additional tips and questions into the show. So thanks. So let's move on to our primary topic of the day, which is selling Drupal. Man, the word selling something,
stigma.
It bothers everybody, right?
Yep. I think actually being a car salesman classifies you as the least trusted professional in the world.
Exactly, but I mean, does that just go to cars? Or does it go to everything?
I think selling in general, there's a big stigma around it. No one wants anything pushed on them, right? So that's the battle in sales, is to not feel like you're pushing something on somebody, but to be helping.
But you're actually solving a problem, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
So Adam, let's start with Drupal, right?
Yep.
When is Drupal a good fit? Because I know your background, it's not all Drupal. I mean,
it isn't.
When I think of Adam, and you and I spent some time together,
right.
And I know you're a WordPress guy. I think of you. I see you shaking your head that you're a WordPress guy, and I only say that because I know you have a very strong WordPress background.
I do.
I also know that you have done a lot of Drupal work as well. So
yeah. So I mean that's
when is Drupal a good fit?
That's a great question, and it's to me it's a really complex question, right? I mean, I think it first starts with understanding what a business goal is. I mean, when someone comes to you and wants a platform, you've got to look at a couple of different factors. How complex is it? Is it simple? What is their perception of the actual platform itself? Are people coming to you with Drupal in mind? Are people coming to you with WordPress in mind? Or are people coming to you not knowing what they need?
So Adam, I mean, are you suggesting that people would come in this is from my perspective in terms of where I interact with people is...
And you've sold a lot of Drupal projects yourself, Steve, correct?
I've never sold one. I'm sorry, can you hear that noise?
Nope.
No, you can't. Okay, it's Apple calling me and telling me that my part is in. It was ringing in my ear. I thought you could hear it.
Nice.
So people come to me asking for a solution generally related to Drupal.
Right.
And because I've never sold any WordPress stuff.
Right.
But I've had people come to me in general and say, hey, we need a solution. And I'm looking at that solution, I'm going, I know there's other tools that could probably do this
better,
and other companies that could do it better, and I might not be the best fit.
And do you tell them that? And I think that's what differentiates a good salesman from a bad one, right? One who knows that this probably isn't a good fit for us.
Yeah, so my approach would be to point them to the people that I know could do it better for them.
Right.
And I've done that a number of times, and I wonder if I'm doing the right thing by that.
Oh, I think you are, yeah, and I think that will bring you more business in the long run. But I mean, I think sales in general is going to be a long game either way you look at it, especially in web services. So I definitely think you're doing the right thing. But as far as Drupal being the right fit, I mean, it's such a complex question or a complex answer that it really depends on what they need.
But there are some key things, though, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when it comes to Drupal, I always feel like Drupal is the complex. It's much more complex. It depends on what feature base you're looking for. What are your outputs? What are your outcomes? So yeah, is it extensible? Is there integration with some other system like Salesforce or HubSpot? How many sites on the platform? Is it a community platform? Yeah, there are many. I also think that as time goes on and that you get the maturation of Drupal and of WordPress, I feel like they're closing a gap between one another, right? WordPress is getting more toward, and I know you guys probably don't want me to say this, but WordPress is getting more towards Drupal, whereas Drupal is becoming more like WordPress to a certain degree.
So in general, do you feel like there's a key differentiator between the two products? And this is not a WordPress versus Drupal show, by the way.
Right.
Which is one of the most popular shows we've ever done.
I got to go back and listen to that one.
Yeah, but I'm just interested because we're chatting about it. Do you think there is a key differentiator there?
I mean, I think one of the things that stands out are things like user roles to me when it comes to Drupal. I also, know that sites with, a lot of commerce or e-commerce, a lot of event registration, Drupal can handle that stuff. It's extremely flexible where it can handle that type of platform. So, in terms of true differentiators, again, it comes back to what they need. So I'm not really sure if that's what would you say are the differentiators, Steve, in your mind when someone comes to you?
Well, that's a loaded question because if someone comes to me, I'm not doing any WordPress work. So the differentiator to me is what I can deliver to you.
Yeah, I get that.
You're coming from a different perspective in that you
offer both.
You work
platforms.
for an agency that did
Right.
both. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question comes down to if a client comes to you with no bias and they say
that's the problem is that there's always some level of bias.
Well, their bias is the product. So they come to you and say, we're building a website for an organization that has 10 different locations, and we have editors, we have legal that needs to review whatever gets posted, and we have customers that log in and access their data.
Yep, that sounds like a Drupal project to me.
And what about, and so how do you make that decision? How do you go from, well, should I even talk about WordPress? Should I present both? Should I just present
Wow,
Drupal?
no. See, I mean, so the sales process in general when you're selling web services is extremely lengthy, right? That first call, I mean, I hardly even touch on what I think is the right content management system right off the bat. I'll make the decision, and I alone, if you're a part of a company where you have a lot of developers and access to your director of engineering and your director of strategy, you want to get their input and their buy-in on it, because sometimes the answer is sometimes it's not clear, right? It's not cut and dry, and I feel like in sales, a lot of it depends too on what your gut is telling you, the other people are telling you, right? Because there are objections. There are what's the word I'm looking for? People have an idea of what they think Drupal is, right? Like, people think there is a very high barrier to entry in using Drupal. So I think a lot of it comes down to education. So it's a really tough question to answer. I'd have to be given a scenario, and I guess going through that type of stuff, there's so many different factors that you look at.
I think, Adam, the way you're answering this question
is a sales way to answer it.
No, and it's a bit vague, but I think it touches really on some of the essence of what this is about. Is it really depends on what someone is trying to accomplish.
Right.
I mean, to ask a general question to you, to say, is Drupal or WordPress better? I mean, it depends.
It totally depends
on all those questions you ask up front, or any other tool. It depends, and I think that is actually the spot on answer. What I'm interested to know from everyone on the panel right now is, do you think Drupal 8 has changed that equation in any way? Thoughts? Do you guys have any thoughts about that?
I mean, I think overall you're in the same scenario. You're looking at any system versus Drupal. We're kind of harping on WordPress, but I mean there are other systems out there.
Dozens.
Joomla, Typo3, Ectron. There are all sorts of stuff out there. But I think what you're looking at really is, as Adam said, you're looking at what the project requires. You're also looking at what are the key components? What are the features? What are the functionality? Does it need to integrate? Does it need e-commerce? So really driving the decision is functionality. Now, getting back to your question about Drupal 8, I think Drupal 8 allows you to do a lot more and integrate into a lot more systems. Whether it's easier than Drupal 7, I don't really know off the top of my head, but I'm going to go with, it's probably going to be a lot easier in Drupal 8 to integrate with third-party systems and to build a more customized content management system for your site or for your intranet or for whatever project you're bringing to it. So do I think that Drupal 8 changes the game? Yeah, I do. I think it adds more flexibility and more features that maybe WordPress or other CMSs don't necessarily have.
I agree. I think. Oh, go ahead, Nick. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I'm in a similar position as Steven, where people are coming to me for Drupal stuff, or I'm selling Drupal. So it's not people aren't coming to me generally asking for WordPress, and if they do,
right.
I generally steer them towards Drupal anyway. I think Drupal 8 will change the game. I don't think it has yet. But I think once it does change the game, that's not to say that WordPress won't come up with something that pushes the envelope further again. And that's even a lot of people think that if you're with Drupal or you're with WordPress, you hate the other, you're against the other. It's more about, I think, we specialize in one or the other because we can provide more value to our customers, and they serve different needs. But the competition is good. When Drupal puts out Drupal 8 and that really pushes the envelope, WordPress has to work hard to put something out that is then going to push Drupal again. We wouldn't have CK Editor and Core if the publishing workflow for WordPress was so simple. We wouldn't have
Right.
paid as much attention to that in the Drupal 8 development cycle if that wasn't something that people were really drawn to. So,
Right.
so the competition causes a better product all around, and choosing one or the other on our end is more about specialization and providing for our customers. On your end, you have to know both because you're selling and trying to fit the best solution for your customer.
Fair, yeah, no, I think that's spot on too. You said something in there, Nick, that so when people come to you and they want or they're looking at things like WordPress and you try and steer them towards Drupal, is that something that you do across the board, or is there ever a moment where someone comes to you and say they need a simple blogging platform? Is there ever a time in your mind or in your head that you say, you know what, Drupal might be a little overkill on this?
So there have been a couple of times where I consider that. However, kind of this is going back more towards what the show is about.
Mm-hmm.
I as part of the sales process, I asked them if there was ever any chance for them, adding e-commerce to their site. Because a lot of the times it's like we just need something very simple. We sell this product. We don't want to have e-commerce. We just want to have information about the product.
Sure.
And if there's any chance in the future where they're planning on adding e-commerce, then Drupal, is overkill in the beginning, but will really add value in the future, and that's generally been the case.
Right.
If somebody really wants just a very, very simple brochure site, then I can always refer them to someone else that
Sure.
does WordPress if they're looking for that.
Sure.
But honestly, that doesn't really happen too often. I mean, I'd say 98% of the people are willing to work with Drupal.
Yeah.
So I have a few thoughts there. One is that sometimes people are coming to me because they want to work with me.
Mm-hmm. Which
and
is a great thing.
Technology is not the issue.
Yep.
So sometimes it's a matter, especially for small businesses that are looking just for a blog, are they interested in the technology, or are they interested to work with someone who can actually get it done for them? And it doesn't, in my mind, often it doesn't matter what the CMS is. If you can work with the vendor that works for you and can deliver the content that you need and the solutions that you want, it doesn't matter what the CMS is. So I think for a certain scenario, the CMS is not part of the equation at all.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
I think, yeah. I mean, I agree up to a certain point, because I feel like I mean, I've been at agencies where we've definitely taken on work where we thought we could do something in Django or something along those lines, and then ended up completing the project, but it was an uphill battle for sure. And I don't know. I mean, and I think that's an interesting thing to think about. If people are coming to you and they want to work with you because they love working with you, do you take the time and the ramp up time it's going to take to learn something else? And
that's a great question, Adam. I've had 3 companies come to me in the last 6 months
mm-hmm.
that have said, I would like to work with you, but we want to do WordPress work.
Was there a reasoning behind the WordPress work?
Well, it was where they were coming from,
right,
as a company and the technology they already had, and I turned it all away.
Yep.
Good for you, man. It's an interesting question. I mean, should your agency, move to a different technology to support the people who are coming to you for work?
Mm-hmm.
A great question. Different podcast, maybe.
Yeah.
As a side note, Steve, any of that WordPress work, if you don't feel like doing it, you can just send it right over to us. I'm sure we'd love to.
I was just about to say
take that off your hands.
Nice.
So, actually, Steve, I think you have a really good point there, and I think a lot of times there are other factors that you're looking at. So, if somebody comes to you and they're like, I don't really care what the CMS of choice is, mm-hmm. I just need this done, right? You're probably looking also at other factors, and this could be true of any company, but you're looking at business size, budget, and those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. I mean, we all have had interactions with the person that says, "Hey, I need a website. I don't care what you build it in, and I have $9,000 to get it built in."
Right.
Okay. Well, that guy in a Drupal site
might not work.
That could be tough, depending on what kind of bells and whistles they want, how complex they want the theme to be, so on and so forth. So a lot of times I think that you can say, okay, you don't care about the technology, we're going to go with Drupal, but other factors may play into that, as they do with probably any sales strategy. But I think in that specific strategy where technology isn't really a high priority for them, other factors have to come into play as well.
So let's move on to competitors. So in the sales process, Adam, we're dealing with, everyone has competitors. So you're competing often with different agencies and then different technology solutions. So those are the two things you're often dealing with. So how do you deal with that?
Oh, wow. Very delicately. So again, it depends. I mean, in terms of platform, I think dealing, if someone comes to you and they don't know the technology, obviously it comes down to needs. But I've been a part of bids where we've gone up against CMSs like LifeRay and Ectron and Adobe CQ that do.
So that's a proprietary versus open source. So that's one category here, right?
Right. Exactly. So I think when it comes to open source versus proprietary, I mean, I address the common things first, right? Like, why is open source better than proprietary, or maybe better is not the right word to use, but what are the benefits of open source?
What are they?
One is the community. I think when you have hundreds, if not close to Drupal community's got to be over a million now. You have many different eyes looking at a product, looking at a code base. So things like security flaws, they get fixed and caught quickly. Things like quality. When you have all these different brains working on a certain core code base, you're probably going to get the best that it can be, right? And there are going to be continual versions coming out with it. Obviously, you can't compete with cost. I mean, if you got no licensing fees, that's great. And I think another major benefit to open source is vendor lock-in. And I think this is something that people kind of overlook sometimes, is that when you go with an Ectron or Adobe CQ, and I don't want to badmouth any technology, obviously, but you get locked into a contract. And what happens if 3 months down the line in that contract, and your needs change as an organization, your needs change as a business or individual, your technology needs to be able to change with it. And that's why I think things like Drupal and other open source platforms are much more beneficial.
I think there's an argument to that, in that if I'm buying into a proprietary system, that I now have a customer or a vendor that I've engaged with financially that is required to deliver the things that we've agreed upon in terms of functionality.
Yeah.
Which I don't have that necessarily with Drupal.
So one of my
an open source solution.
One of my previous talks, I was actually talking to a marketing group, and my talk was based around like dealing with strife in your relationship with whatever company you're working with. And one of the things that I love about open source versus a proprietary solution is that you can be in a relationship, right? You can be in a relationship with XYZ company, and XYZ company can push this proprietary software to you, and maybe it's their proprietary software, which would be an interesting scenario. But if the relationship falls apart, you really have no option to go somewhere else, right? You're kind of stuck with their proprietary system that they can only support, they can only work on.
Yep.
So you're kind of in trouble there, right? One thing I like to go to is, like, the Drupal community is so large that if you're working with us and for some reason the relationship doesn't work out, there are hundreds of other choices out there that can still work on the project, because everybody's aware of the code, everybody's aware of best practices and bad things that people have done, and there's a large pool to drink from, so to speak. So that's one of the things.
The issue with that, John, is that if I've got a website that you built for me and has certain functionality, and this one thing is not working, there's not a lot of pressure you can put on anyone in the open source community to get that issue fixed. But you can in the proprietary business, because they are owning the code. This thing does not work for me, and it needs to be fixed ASAP.
Well, but on the flip side,
so, yeah,
if you need to fix it, you can hire somebody specifically to fix that.
Of course. I mean, maybe I could go hire someone to go fix it, right?
Which you could never do if you were in a proprietary system. The proprietary system,
But I wouldn't need to do that. But the point is, I wouldn't need to do that in the proprietary system.
There's also, but hold on. There's also no guarantee there in the proprietary system that they're going to be able to fix your problem, or they're going to fix it very quickly.
Yeah.
You're using their proprietary software. There are probably a half a dozen other people using that as well. So they have to go through whatever their development process is to push out that change. It's not like they're just going to make the change to your system. Maybe it is an individual instance and they can do that, but most of the time proprietary systems work on a standard code base. So they have to go through their development process in order to be able to push that change out to you.
Right.
So you could still be waiting for months before a change is actually pushed out.
I mean, but what you just said applies in either case, right? I mean, you could be waiting months in any place.
Absolutely.
Scenarios, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So let's move on to how in the sales process would you position Drupal as a good solution? What are the key things? And I think we've sort of just started to touch on them.
Mm-hmm.
Is what are the key things that make Drupal a good solution in general for an implementation?
Yeah. Well, again, Drupal is good for something. I mean, I always think Drupal, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Drupal is good for something that's
everything.
I knew that was coming.
Oh man, he took the words out of my mouth. I was going to actually let him answer.
Well, I think no, I do. I believe. I think there's a place for it, right? There's a place for WordPress. There's a place for Drupal. Even a place for Ectron, I'm sure. But I don't know as much as the proprietary world. But I position Drupal when it comes to something that is super custom, unique, usually on the larger side. So if you have a site that has many different, subdomains, I think I touched on this a little bit too, but, membership sites. But again, I think, a lot depends on, it really comes down to educating people on Drupal, because one of the biggest objections that I'll get when talking about Drupal is, it's too complex and it's hard for me to use. And people want things like content entry to be very easy, right? And from my impression, like beyond Drupal 8 has a WYSIWYG editor now, but before you had to build that in.
Yeah, but so I'm just going to combat you here a little, Adam.
Yeah, absolutely.
From a have you ever seen users on the Drupal side that could not use a Drupal admin side of the website?
So
I mean, and is it because I also use WordPress, so I'm familiar with both environments. I don't see how they're different. I know that's an argument people bring up all the time.
It is.
But I actually don't see how they're different.
And
frankly.
you don't see, I don't think, and Steve, if I can play devil's advocate with you, I don't think you see it because you know Drupal through and through. You know how it operates. It's intuitive to you, but I think that came over a number of years, obviously.
But that doesn't happen with the WordPress people as well?
No, I think it does, right? When I first, I think it does. I think people grab it a little more simply than I mean, it's interesting, right? Because I often hear people say if you can use Word, you can use WordPress, right? And that's kind of true.
I use that
People don't say
tagline
that
all the
about
time when
Drupal.
I'm selling Drupal.
I don't want anybody to take away my Drupal card here, but I think what the point Adam's making here, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, and this is going to be counter to Steve's point, I think, is that like out of the box, WordPress is very very easy to use, very easy to get up and running, very easy to start building a website on.
It is.
For us, Drupal is very easy for that because we've had years of experience. We know where things are, and we understand it. I've also seen, people out there do terrible, heinous, unimaginable things to the Drupal admin that make it really, really hard for a user to edit content. Right. I'm not even going to get into the list because it could go on forever. But I think that's really the key is that you need to be able to sell. When you're selling Drupal, you need to be able to sell yourself as somebody that's going to make the admin more user friendly for them, and put those fears at rest to be able to say, hey, we're going to build an admin that you guys can actually use, which means you're going to get a WYSIWYG editor, which is, and this is where I'm sure Steve probably uses it, which is like using Microsoft Word to edit your website. Right. And then we're going to make the admin more user-friendly by moving things around and kind of hiding things that you don't need to see.
I have to interject here. I used to hear that a lot more, and I hear this sometimes now still, that WordPress is so much easier to install, get up and running. It's the exact same process for both of them. You put the code there, you create a database, you visit a page. Like, it's literally the same thing, number one. Number two, if you're not, and Drupal has tools like Drush and Drupal console that I don't know that WordPress has. But number two, if you're doing it yourself as a business owner, every host I go to now has the one button click install for Drupal as well as WordPress. So they're both just as easy to get up and running. And if you're I mean, I can't imagine that you're just giving the default experience of WordPress to your customers, that you're not customizing anything. Yes, you customize some stuff with Drupal, but they're all modules that you just turn on. There's like 10.
And believe it or not, that is the hard part, right?
Well, no,
to a business owner who doesn't know any code, that's problematic.
But the business owner that's doing it himself isn't our customer, so.
Right. That's true. You got a good point there.
So I think we're talking about two separate things here. Obviously, from a agency standpoint, selling a solution, there's going to be a high amount of configuration that we're going to do and setup that we're going to do. And then, we're also talking about the person that's doing it on their own. And that's usually who WordPress gravitates to, because for some reason the setup is easier. I don't know.
It is. But dude, that feeds into the hype, right? The customers that
Absolutely.
For us, that feeds into the hype, and that creates a problem across the board for Drupal.
Absolutely, because they're coming to the meeting where you're trying to sell them Drupal, and they're saying, well, my niece says that WordPress is really easy to install, and she did it on
WordPress.com.
Her high school's cupcake fundraiser website, and she did it in like a day, and you guys want to take 3 weeks, and you're going to give me like this big complicated thing.
And that is a huge part of the problem. And that's why in selling it really comes down to perception, right? So you have to change the perception. You have to, that value, the reality of what they're getting, to be the right answer, right? But they're not perceiving it that way. So when you sell them, it's a slow build, but I mean, it usually ends with some kind of like, I mean, if people want WordPress but the right solution is Drupal, show them Drupal, right? Demo that. Put together a quick site, show them how easy it would be to do content creation and input, and you can slowly get people to see that Drupal is the right platform.
Adam, question for you. In positioning Drupal, would you say that selling in this case is synonymous with educating?
Oh yeah, 99% of the time for sure. Yep.
Because you're changing perceptions, but you're not changing perceptions through like propaganda. You're changing perception through education and factual intelligence, right?
I agree, and also working with. I mean, I feel like certain prospects have to be hands-on with that stuff in order to see, right? People learn in different ways. People get educated in different ways. So yeah, I mean, was that the? Well, I've lost my train of thought.
Yes,
Perception.
that was the answer to my.
That was the answer. Yeah. Okay. I just making sure I got that one.
Just making sure we're listening.
All right, let's move on. What's fascinating about this phone call is that we've kind of moved into a little bit of a WordPress versus Drupal.
I know, and I don't want to do that. I want to talk more about selling, Steve.
But
you know what?
But you know what, Adam? It's what we're selling often is competing against WordPress. So
yeah, I know.
It's natural that it leads to this a little bit.
I mean, so I feel like if you look at statistically, right, at WordPress, I mean, and I don't want, maybe I shouldn't say the numbers, but what is it?
No, say them. I mean,
25% of the internet now is done in WordPress. 50% of the top 100,000 websites on the internet today are done in WordPress. I think it's about 15% of the top 100,000 sites are done in Drupal, and I would say what is it, like 3 or 4% of the websites on the internet are Drupal. If you look, I would say if you look at dollar amounts or deal size, Drupal is going to outweigh WordPress by a little bit.
Yeah, and I think when you start getting to the largest, like the top 1,000, I think that position really reverses, especially when you go to things like higher education or complex corporate.
Of course, because it goes to my analogy previously.
Absolutely.
You know, every high schooler that needs a website is doing the one-click install and is on WordPress, and it's all easy, and if any of our listeners are high school students and you're using Drupal, I applaud you. Please feel free to follow me and berate me on social media saying not all high school students are using WordPress, but to my point, those numbers can be skewed. You always see people coming out with, "Oh, WordPress is like, the numbers you just gave us," and
right.
I think honestly, and we can move on right after this. I think the most genius thing that WordPress did that kind of fueled this whole conception is WordPress.com. I mean, there are similar competitors in Drupal for that. They're just not. They're not even comparable.
Yeah, but you know what? On WordPress.com, because I've looked at it recently, you can't do anything. I mean, WordPress.com is a very stripped down version of WordPress.
Yeah, but it gets people into.
But you can't do anything.
It does. My aunt, who doesn't have any technology, has WordPress.com, and she blogs about her hiking.
You can do very. I mean, it's not a business solution. It's a very basic blog solution for someone who doesn't want to do any integration with anything.
Right.
I
agree with
honestly,
you.
that's most of the internet, right? Most of the people out there that are looking for websites are going there and getting everything they need, and they think it's great, which is fine.
And it is great.
It fits a niche, which is awesome.
Right.
Because that means they don't come to us with $100 and go, "I want a website." But it also skews the numbers, I think, in the favor of WordPress, because Drupal, you can go to Drupal Gardens and kind of do the same sort of thing, but there's still a really big learning curve there.
Yeah, Drupal Gardens doesn't hold a candle to WordPress.com.
So let's move on to objections you get from a sales process for Drupal.
Oh, yeah.
And we've kind of touched on them quickly.
Yep.
I think we've touched on them already, but let's deal with them.
Yeah, so I do get the one that it's too complex, right? And I think the way to show them that is through some kind of a working demo, and that I think, or if not a working demo, screenshots. Screenshots work great. I mean, I've actually someone's come to us with WordPress in mind, and we knew it was a Drupal project, and we pitched it, and those screenshots. I mean, we put together a doc that was like, I don't know, 10 or 12 pages long with screenshots of content entry, content types, menus, and it looked really good. So I think that's the way to combat complexity. Drupal devs are expensive. How many do you guys get this a lot? That Drupal takes more time.
It depends on the customer. As far as the
rate of
expense
Drupal.
goes, it really depends. As far as how long it takes, I think that's a good thing that people bring up. If people are thinking that Drupal takes longer, it really goes back to what John said earlier about education and just educating them. It takes time to build a good product. It takes time to polish a product, and that's true no matter what technology you're using. Like you said, if you're building in Angular, if you're building it in Django, you're building in WordPress, you're building in Drupal, to really polish a project and build it correct, it takes time.
Of course.
So it's as far
feature set. Yeah.
I mean, in reality, if you're spending money on a CMS, whether it's open source or proprietary, Drupal devs aren't really any more expensive than a WordPress dev or a Ruby dev or a professional of the same skill set. System, regardless, I don't think that Drupal devs, make more money or get paid more, and things tend to take, probably the same amount of time. I don't know that, or it may be less time depending on what you're trying to do. So
it really, as far as the expense, it really depends who the client is. If you're talking to a small business owner. If I'm talking to a small business owner that needs a rather simple site, then sometimes my rate is expensive because he may not, he may be able to get the same product from a smaller freelancer or agency. But when you're talking to my bigger clients, where I'm competing as a freelancer, competing against agencies, I definitely come out on the value end. Just because I don't have the overhead of dedicated
offices, salary,
exactly. So the expense really depends on who the customer is, and you always want to make sure you're providing at least the value that you're charging to the customer in the end.
I completely agree. Yeah, I mean that's so. I completely agree. Do you find that you go up against a lot of less experienced freelancers for certain gigs?
Personally, not as much anymore. But that's more due to how I market myself.
Right.
In the beginning, I did, but then again, I was in the beginning, I was
right. I did stuff for free when I was
No, it's definitely there was definitely a transition period where I had to kind of retrain myself in my own thinking, where I had to determine whether or not I was competing against them or not, and ultimately I determined that I wasn't. My defining my competition helped me define who my customers should be, who my clients should be, and what services I provide. So
smart strategy, Nick. I like it.
Thanks. So how do you deal with this is something that I'm always interested in, because as a freelancer, speaking of having different resources, how do you deal with like the learning curve and user documentation and that kind of stuff? Because as selling for an agency, you have a lot more resources to be able to provide to the customer. How does that come into the sales process? Training, documentation, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean training. I've had very few people actually ask if we provide documentation, which, obviously we do. I don't think that's so much. And I think if they realized what documentation actually, represents, it would be more of a concern. But training is a big one. John Oomph we do training. So
So Adam, what is the difference between documentation and training?
Well, I would say that training is actually showing somebody how to do something. Documentation is there when, you know, the agency no longer is.
I have very
So
strong opinion on
my approach
this topic.
Yeah. So, and John, I'll let you talk in a second. So, my approach in my company has been that training and documentation are one and the same. So, if I train you, I will record it in a video.
Oh, sure,
You
yeah.
will see it, and then that will be
absolutely.
a documentation moving forward.
Right, you do that in a screencast. Absolutely.
Yep.
But I mean, I thought, Nick, I was under the impression you were asking about documentation in terms of the code development, what certain functions do, that kind of thing.
No, more. I mean, that's useful as well, always. But no, it's more like in documentation and training. You know, how do you do this? How do you do that? So that they don't always have to call back the agency, they can just review it themselves.
Sure. So then I would go with exactly what Steve said.
They're one and the same. Good to know.
So,
John, you had something.
John, I'm curious about what.
No, I agree. I agree with Steve wholeheartedly. I have worked for companies in the past that felt it was very important to provide written documentation on how to do certain tasks in your content management system, and ultimately, what it ends up being is something in somebody's bottom drawer or on their shelf that never gets utilized after you go through it the first time.
Right.
Where they are calling you, emailing you, putting in a ticket anyway to ask the questions. My biggest complaint is just don't do the documentation. Don't do written documentation. Do a very extensive training, and exactly what Steve said, record it.
Yep.
Ask them if it's okay to record it, send them the video, and then that way they can review the video if they have a question. Steve, at one point you were doing kind of a table of contents to the videos. Are you still doing that?
Table of contents? No, never did that.
You never pointed out specific.
No.
Okay, maybe that was some. I guess it definitely was somebody else.
That's a good idea.
You're confusing me with someone way better than I am.
That sounds like something Casey and Ellen would do.
Even doing that is going to be A, less time, and B, more useful for the user than written documentation, because I 95% guarantee that they would never read the documentation, and if they do read the documentation, they're still going to have questions and still need to contact you. So,
no, if we can only put our videos up on Netflix, we might be in good shape here, right? To get customers to watch what we're doing.
That'd be interesting.
Like your training videos, or
exactly,
talking Drupal videos, because I think we should probably talk to Netflix about that. Netflix, if you're listening.
I'm sure we can get them into to the Talking Drupal world. So, Adam, as we wrap up here,
yes,
I'm gonna give you an opportunity to give you a top 3 or 5, whichever one you want to do. Like, what are your key things for selling Drupal? What would you recommend?
Understand your customer's business need.
Yep.
Separate outputs versus outcomes. Example, people come to me and say, "Hey, I need we need we need the calendar module, right?" Well, why do you need the calendar module? Because that's the output. That's the easy part. What's the outcome? What are you trying to accomplish? Well, we want to get more people to our events or whatever. Make sure you have those separated and clearly defined. Make sure you educate or close the gap on their value perception of the platform, of the agency, of the web service itself. Ask the right questions, and I would say ask open-ended questions. Don't ask, do you need this? Is this what you need? Ask, what do you need? Because it keeps them talking. So ask the what, why, when, who, how, and that's 4. That's about it, Steve.
That works. I mean, sales is a difficult part of any system in terms of getting people to understand what you're trying to do and solving the solution. So
Yep.
I think the tips we have today are very good. Let's move on to our module of the week. And that's me. I can see in my notes here. So it's actually not a module. So this is related to Drupal 8. It's not a module per se, but it's called Config Installer. So those of you who are working with Drupal 8 right now are probably familiar with the configuration system in Drupal 8. But what if you have a website that you need to launch, and it's based on some settings you have in another website? We've all learned that configuration management will not provide that to you, but that's not true. What you can actually do is you can export from website A, you can do a full export of a configuration, and then when you install a new website, you can use that configuration to install website B. And you can do that by downloading and installing config_installer. And that goes not in your modules directory, but it goes into your profiles directory. So what happens is when you install a new Drupal 8 site, if you've copied the config_installer into your Drupal 8 installation, when you go through the install process, it will ask you to pick a configuration file that you want to use to build the website. So it allows you to take a website that you built in Drupal 8 and then use that as a starting point for another website, which is really not, in general, the idea of configuration management, but it works. I've used it. It works. Does that make sense?
Really good to know.
Did I explain that properly?
Yeah, I think so. So instead of it being environment to environment, it allows you to have a common starting point.
Yeah, so configuration management is I start with a database A, and then I can move things between copies of database A. Really is what it is. But this config installer allows you to create a brand new instance of Drupal 8 with database B, import that in there. There are some bugs. It's not perfect, but it gets you 95% of where you need to be.
Yeah, it's good to know.
Cool.
So.
All right. So I just want to remind everyone, if you're interested in asking questions to Talking Drupal, you want to have your questions answered during one of our podcasts, you could leave a voicemail at 401-400-2004. You could also send an email to talkingdrupal@gmail.com.
Send us your questions. We'll read them and answer them.
Cool.
Right
Yeah,
here.
we'll do our best. And Adam, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you guys. I had a great time. I hope
Adam,
I answered all the questions that you guys wanted to know.
This it was interesting because this sales conversation turned into a WordPress Drupal.
I hate it.
Which kind of makes sense a little bit. But also, I think we get some good tips in terms of doing sales in general.
If anyone wants to know more tips, look me up. Tweet at me. I love talking about sales philosophies. So
where can they tweet at you? Where can they find you?
At Ajmatic, AJMATIC. Or you can email me adam.lamagna, kind of spelled like lasagna, only with an M, at gmail.com.
Great. And those links will be in the show notes.
Yeah.
Moving forward. How about you, Nick?
You can find me online at Nixvan, NICXVAN, and online at enlighteneddevelopment.com. There's just no E on the beginning.
Great. And John has dropped off this phone call, so Who wants to take John's outro? I mean, we kind of know what it is, right?
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead,
can
Nick,
do that.
it.
You can find me at John Picozzi on all the social networks and always online at oomfinc.com.
Yep.
Exactly what it was. You nailed it. Right, great. All right, guys, thanks. Hey, Adam, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to having you on in the future as well. I hope
Awesome.
you will come back for it to us.
Absolutely, man. Anytime, Steve. Thanks so much. Nick,
All right.
thanks so much. I'm going to drop off. I'll see you guys.
See ya. Bye-bye.
Good. See you later.